When I first got to Wyoming, which was, believe it or not, a little over 10 years ago, a gentleman came up in the news, and I read his name on the air as I was talking about him, and I said, Macheli. In which case, the newsman came into the studio and whispered into my ear, "It's Macheli, you idiot." Well, Matt, I was talking about you yesterday, and it's been so long since you and I have spoken, I made the same mistake. So, you could pronounce it either way, I guess, the way it's spelled,
Yeah,
right?
I've heard it worse, so that's fine. But we do say Michael I. So.
Michael is the way to go. Now, a lot of people recognize that name. You've been in Wyoming politics for how long now? Can you even fathom it?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was first elected legislature when I was 1 year old,
Wow.
so that's what I tell people. I started from really since I was one, and my earliest memories as a little kid are going door to door and
Yeah.
knocking on doors and having politicians, stopping at our house. We grew up in Southwest Wyoming, and so for most of the statewide politicians, we were the only people that they knew
Yeah.
in that part of the state. So we'd have candidates staying at our house the whole election season. So.
Oh, wow. Some people might have a problem with that, but if you're in politics, it's a good thing. Yeah. All right. Now, you wrote an op-ed piece, which I read at a Cowboy State Daily, which I read on the air yesterday, and I wanted to make sure to have you on because I understood, and I even got a couple of calls about it on the air, that some people would misunderstand what you're saying. I think you and I are on the same page here. When I came to Wyoming, I looked at how many Republicans there are across the state. It's majority Republicans. But I recognized immediately that there were quite a few Republicans who, honestly, to have the tag of rhino, I did not disagree with. And I thought, no, some of those people need to be rotated out. But there's a difference between a guy like me who shoots my mouth off on the radio and voters who have a problem with someone who they think needs to be more conservative. And then there's the far alt-right who have involved themselves in what I look at as just bullying tactics. And it's no different than the people on the far extreme left who actually engage in the same exact kind of bullying. And is that essentially what your article was saying?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Glenn. And I appreciate you having me on because I think it's an important discussion that we need to be having as a state. That it's not even about where you fall on the political spectrum. It's about your tactics that you're using and how you're trying to go about making change. Like I said in my article, I'm pretty extreme conservative. I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody more conservative than me on any single issue. But that Wyoming's facing serious problems, and we're sitting in the middle of a fiscal crisis that's really almost incomprehensible. And we need all the smart people to come together and all the ideas to be brought forward. And we've got to figure this out. And I've seen this rise of, I think politics is a reflection of our society. And I feel like as a society, we've become addicted to outrage, addicted to controversy. And when our motivation is more on outrage and controversy than it is on addressing the actual problems that we face, I think that's what we're looking at in Wyoming right now, and what I'm trying to call attention to.
I think there are those who are a little surprised when I talk about who I've made friends with, even before I came to Wyoming, but who my friends are, because there's those people I can be critical of, but I'll turn and also say, but if you get to know them. I mean, like, for example, Governor Meade and I, and also Governor Gordon and I, we talk on a regular basis, and I find them to be gentlemen. They're really nice people. I get along with them just fine. But we also understand that we have some real serious disagreements. And I find that if I talk to them civilly, they're actually willing to sit there and engage me in the conversation, and I can actually get their ear and maybe even convince them. As opposed to, haven't we had some cases where some representatives here in Wyoming where their wives picked up the phone and there's some guy screaming and cussing on the line? I mean, it's almost threatening at that point. We've had some cases like that, haven't we?
Certainly, and I think, again, I agree with everything that you're saying. That this is Wyoming. You can still know every one of your state senators and state representatives personally, and you should engage with them, and you should share your ideas with them. But the rise of this outrage machine is not healthy, and it's not productive. I actually think the other reason why I think this is such an important cause is I think it's actually hurting the conservative movement. I think it has a tendency to diminish good ideas that seem to come from the conservative side.
I would rather we're the adults in the room. You willing to take a question from a listener?
Sure.
Okay, here's Joey on the line. Hi, Joey. What you got from us?
Hey, I had a question for Matt. I read the op-ed, and I understand what you're talking about. I don't agree with most of it, but isn't the point of writing an op-ed to display some type of credibility and, have your words mean something? Because there's a post that you put on in responding to your op-ed that says, as state chair, you got more pro-life bills than ever before in state history passed. And for the first time ever, you got stand your ground passed. And I'm looking at the 2015 to 2017 sessions. There were no pro-life or pro-gun bills of any meaning that were really passed. More of them actually failed. And stand your ground didn't pass until 2018. So I don't see where your opinion has any credibility based on the other statements you have when you look at the actual record. You're taking credit for other people's work and just emotionally ranting about not being effective when you were in office.
All right, Matt, what do you think?
Well, thanks, Joe. I appreciate the question. The point is, and I mean, I dispute those statements, that we did work on pro-life legislation, and we got the 20-week abortion ban bill. We worked on that and got it through during that session, and I was there and testified in favor of it. We did get pro-gun legislation through during those times as well. And the conservatives that were there working on those bills were able to get those things through, and I'm proud of that. But what I want to keep it focused on is the bigger picture. We need to be looking at what can we do to make conservative change in Wyoming? What can we do to get out of this problem? Like I said before, a $1.5 billion deficit on a $3 billion budget, that's almost incomprehensible. And so instead of focusing on these fights and on these strawmen that we create that are all based on emotion, we need to be addressing the real issues. And that's what I'm trying to explain in my op-ed.
Okay, so in other words, rather than the yelling and the screaming, you want someone to actually walk up and say, I don't think your plan will work, I have a better idea.
Right. Here's my idea. Here's what I think we need to be doing. And let's stop the yelling and screaming at each other, because that's not productive.
All right. I think that's simple enough. So can you identify then a particular group or some individuals who come to mind? Are they members of or do you want to go there?
Well, and so I even tried to say this in my op-ed, and I want to be clear. Like, I was not talking about, the state party apparatus or even individuals. I'm talking about all of it, and that's what all of us, and that's what I tried to say in that last paragraph, right? Again, this addiction that we have to controversy, this addiction that we have to being outraged, right? To just being angry at everything, impacts all of us. And I think no matter where you fall on that political spectrum as a philosophy, we all are susceptible to that. And I think you've seen that in the state party from every different person, part of that political spectrum. It's easy to fall into that. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that if you find yourself more worried about winning, more worried about shouting down your opponent than you are solving the problem, then you're part of the problem. And we're all that way, and I myself fall into that, right? I know I do. And that's what I'm trying to talk about. That's the conversation I want to have.
Okay. So, again, more of a piece of civility. Let's take a look at what happened real quick, and then I'll let you go. Up in Gillette, Wyoming, it's not so much that there was a scuffle out front. that got me. But boy, the Republican convention, that was tense this time around, wasn't it?
It was, and that was part of part of what brought me to this decision. Is it just for me, state convention has always been, since I've been 1 year old, a place to go and it's friends, and you're all working together because you love the state. And it's not about one side beating the other side. It's not about one group having more power than the other. It's about all of us who are on a broad spectrum working together to find solutions. And that's the Republican Party that I love, and that's what I want us to move towards.
All right. Matt Macheli, I'll pronounce your name correctly next time I talk to you. All right. Hey, thanks for coming on the program and explaining this. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the time, Glenn.
All right.
Thank you.
9:23 is the time. So Joey Diamond from Saratoga writes me, I was the one assaulted by Mike Pierce at the convention. Michael, I wasn't even there for that. Well, I don't think that has to do with what we're talking about. Senator Burchard, hang on. I'm getting to you. I want to make your call a priority, but let's go ahead and real quick talk to Kevin in Cheyenne. Hi, Kevin. What you got?
Hey, I was just going to respond to Mr. Michael.
Sure.
Bullies in politics, that has always been and always will be. And oftentimes when we complain about it, we're not really helping the situation, and calling a lot of people alt-right, which has lots of connotations with it, is in a way bullying in itself.
Okay. So would you rather he defined a little bit more exactly what he meant by alt-right?
It would certainly help.
Okay.
I certainly would not have supported the candidates he supported with his PAC, Wyoming
Right.
Hope.
Okay.
And I certainly wouldn't have done it in the way he had done it. But, so I wonder if I'm opposing what Mr. Michael says. Am I alt-right? I don't think so. I offer solutions all the time.
Right, yeah.
So,
I just and where the place where I agree with him on is I have no problem at all with people arguing and debating. I mean, hey, look what I do for a living here. I just hate it when I see people, like he was saying, they get angry and there's a lot of shouting going on and name calling, but they're not actually offering any solutions, and that's what I have a problem with.
Well, certainly I've lived through SF 104. I've
Sure.
seen all
Oh,
that
yeah.
before, and a lot of it was irrational. So
Okay.
get out. But and a lot of it was coming from the people that he's supporting.
Sure.
And I don't see those people bringing solutions. I see them getting us to this point where we are in this situation.
Okay, I got to jump to Senator Bouchard. Anthony, it's been a while. How you been?
Hey, doing pretty good.
Very
Been busy,
good.
It's
Okay.
campaign season. Plus, we got day jobs and all that.
Oh,
so.
day jobs and all that. Okay, well, I hope everything's been well with you there. Okay, so what do you think about what Mr. Michael I said in his op-ed?
Well, I can tell you, man, I take offense to the all right thing. I mean, it's not even descriptive of anyone or anything. It's a stab out there, and quite frankly, this thing's signed off at the bottom as a longtime political consultant and former chairman of the party. There needs to be some real transparency here, because the fact of the matter is, Matt Macheli is a lobbyist, and he has one foot in that lobbyist camp, one foot in politics, and he's trying to dance around. And he has a PAC that he started, and quite frankly, the PAC that he started took in a major contribution from a guy that moved from California to Wyoming. And when I went and looked at the donations, just randomly, the last two donations that he gave money to in California, the guy that he accepted money from this PAC, that guy gave money to two Democrats. And if you look at the voting record on one of them, the other one didn't make that in office. This stuff is far left, and I don't know what issue or why he gave money to those candidates in California, but I'd like to have a fly on the wall to listen to why there's a deal made with a major contributor that skirted campaign finance laws to give $5,000 to my opponent in the primary and 20 candidates in the state. So he's being disingenuous of what he's talking about, and quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of it.
Okay.
I mean, I've had I tell people that I voted for Medicaid for all, and it was a flat-out lie. And so there's just why people are angry? They're sick and tired of the people that treat quite frankly, they're tired of the swamp. That's why people are mad.
Okay.
And they have the right to be mad.
All right. So now what about, though, but this is where I come in. I know you and I have some different tactics on this. Over the years, I have gotten very good, actually, at turning to people that I really disagree with. I mean, really disagree with. And yet, because I have this weird sense of humor and I tend to be a little more gentle with them, I find that people that are total polar opposites of opinions like, yours and mine, Anthony, I can sit down and talk with them, and actually they start listening, and I actually start convincing them of things. That's how I prefer to handle things. But then there's other people who are so aggressive, they turn off the opposition. You see what I mean? It's so aggressive.
Saying, but,
okay.
But here's my take on this. I mean, they are constantly throwing stuff like that in my face. But if you go, they don't have anything on my floor debates, anything that I've said in public, as being a state senator. But yet it's all loose. I mean, are some people that they get unhinged? Yeah, that's just part of it. I mean, we don't throw conservatives under the bus and call them all right because we disagree with them either. So that's where I'm at.
I appreciate you calling in, Anthony. I wanted to hear what you had to say on this anyway. Thank you. I appreciate. You don't call enough, by the way, Anthony. You don't call the show enough. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I've been busy.
All right, thank you. Good to hear from you again. 9:36 the time. Wake up, Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. 888-97 Woods. That's 888-97 WOODS. You can squeeze your calls in on this topic. So I'll just tell you what I was thinking during this. And it's not a matter to me of whether because there were, besides Senator Bouchard, there was one gentleman I called earlier, one of the first calls we got, while I still had Mr. Macheli on. And the caller right away started questioning things that Mr. Macheli had said and he had voted on. Anthony, Senator Bouchard went, well, why is he supporting these people, financially, sending money to? And that has nothing to do with what the topic is. That's going after somebody. Okay. Now, if what they're saying is legitimate, that's fine. If somebody's actually giving money to Democrats or whatever and you're a Republican, I can understand you bringing that issues up. But that has nothing to do with this topic. And that's part, not entirely, but part of what we actually are talking about. A while ago, I turned off all of the news networks. I don't watch any of them. I got tired of it. I get my news somewhere else. And I quit just because it became a shouting match of pundits trying to say outrageous things just to do damage, and most of it's not even true or relevant, and very few people are actually offering, as Mr. Macheli said, solutions to problems. And that's part of what I'm talking about here. I think he's correct when he says there are those people who are addicted to the fight. And that's not productive, and that's not solving any problems. If you do think someone's a rhino and you want to get rid of them, I'm with you on that. There's several that we have in this past, in the primary just recently. We gotten rid of some people we've been trying to get rid of for a long time, and I'm glad we did. But again, I'm just not the kind of person who's interested anymore in a lot of the name-calling, for example, or anger, because it's just not productive. Again, it's a lot of mudslinging and accusations, and no solutions to problems are being offered. John is in Gillette. Hi, John.
Hey, Glenn.
Yes, sir.
To that point of being addicted to fighting, don't you think that the term alt-right is just a nebulous, negative, pejorative term?
Sure.
Because we know the definition of rhino.
Yeah.
I mean, a rhino is someone who claims to be a fiscally conservative, small government person, but doesn't behave like that.
Right. Yeah.
But alt-right has sort of a nebulous, negative connotation. It's almost as meaningless as the way they use the word racist now. Everyone's a racist, and now the word doesn't have any meaning anymore because they abused it and overused it.
I think, and that's one of the things I was saying to Senator Bouchard about that is, or maybe he should have used, or I think the caller before Bouchard, there are some people who are thinking, is Macheli referring to me? When he says alt-right, I think he had needed to better define exactly who he was talking about rather than throw out some generic term that could stick to just about anybody.
Well, the other thing that's really concerning about that is alt-right seems to be highly associated as a label with people who are against the status quo.
Right.
The status quo isn't working.
Right.
So anyone who, for example, says we really have to shrink the state budget, we don't have the money for it, we're 1.5 billion short. Oh, you're alt-right. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, but now there's a difference. Again, someone who shows up and says we need to shrink the budget, and here's the numbers, and here's the facts, and here's my solution. No, they shouldn't be labeled as anything radical, although sometimes they are, in order to discredit them. So they shouldn't have to do anything. You know what I mean, John? It just gets to be too much where there's a lot of venom being spit around, and when someone does have a solution, they're discredited and told to shut up.
Well, that's the big change in the last 30 years. We used to debate policies and outcomes, and now we just personally attack each other.
Right. Well, thank you, John. Here's Lisa in Cheyenne. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Glenn. How are you today?
Very good.
I do have a solution.
Okay.
How about we stick with the Constitution?
Yeah.
I know my state senator has been in meetings and said this bill is unconstitutional, and they just look at her with blank looks.
Yeah. But it's probably because they haven't read the thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. Let me go to Mike.
That's my point. Let's get back to the Constitution.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. Michael, hi.
Hey, Glenn, sorry, I just wanted to follow up. Joey asked me which bills I was talking about, and I didn't have it in front of me, so I did want to say, in 2017, we passed the abortion ultrasound information bill. It was sponsored by Chuck Gray, and I worked really hard to get that bill passed. And then we also passed the Wyoming Repeal Gun-Free Zone Act. Again, that was Baker and Blackburn and Clem and a whole list of people. We worked really hard to get it passed. The governor did veto that one, but we did get it passed. So those are the two I was referencing.
All right.
Again, the point is we were working to push conservative things through the legislature.
Real quick, and I'm up against the clock, so I have to get a real quick answer from you. So some of the criticism then is when you say alt-right, isn't that too broad, and isn't that kind of a jab at some people, just like you're accusing people jabbing at, the alt-right jabbing at you, you're jabbing at them by calling them the alt-right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair criticism.
Okay.
And that's why I spent the first two-thirds trying to define what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because we hijack words. And I think the left has hijacked that word. And I don't want to get caught up. I would on alt-right in the way that the left media uses that.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's the mentality.
Okay. Hey, thanks for calling back. I appreciate it. 942, Wake Up Wyoming. 9:48 is the time. Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Before I get to Frank Gambino, Linda's been hanging on in Cheyenne. Hi, Linda. Thanks for calling. What you got?
Good morning, Glenn. I'm listening to this conversation this morning about Matt Macheli's editorial. There's something that I think we have all gotten into a bad habit of doing, and that is we listen to reply rather than listen to learn and ask questions. I find myself doing it. As soon as somebody opens their mouth and starts talking, sometimes I tend to be thinking about, well, how am I going to answer that individual? And I think in the political realm, and maybe this has been fed somewhat by talk radio, some of the talk shows on TV and such, where they tend to talk over each other, and especially the guests.
Yeah.
And sometimes the host. But I think that's something that we all need to think about. If we talk to our kids that way, we don't hear what our children say. Our children don't hear what we say, because we've already got this determined answer that we're going to be providing.
Well, and part of what I'm getting here, and I'm getting this by messages on Facebook and off of the app, there are those people specifically that Mr. Macheli was talking about who are now sending me messages, and they are doing exactly what he was talking about, and they don't understand it. What they're doing is attacking him rather than listening. All he's saying is, can we have a little civility, please?
Yeah. And I agree with that, because, communication is one of those things that you have to listen and not just talk. And that's key to communication.
All right.
I may not agree with what you say, but I would like to hear what you have to say so that we can discuss this and we can ask more questions. I'm reading a book, and I just started it here recently by Trey Gowdy about it's okay to ask questions.
Right.
Or it's okay to ask. And I found the book, even just what little bit I've had a chance to read, to be very enlightening about just how we communicate with each other. And, I would recommend it. I know a lot of people that listen to your show probably think Trey Gowdy's a pretty good guy. And he, he's a thinker. But he asks questions. He doesn't spend all of his
and then he
time
listens.
interrupting.
All right.
Yes,
I got to run. I'm up against the clock. Thanks for calling in. I appreciate it.